Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm meteorologist Thomas Skiboy. I hope all of you are having a fantastic Sunday, and I hope that the weekend has treated you well so far. We got a lot to talk about, so we are going to go ahead and delve into the tropics because we now have another hurricane out in the Atlantic Basin. That is Hurricane Maria, and Hurricane Maria is approaching the Leeward Islands. So during the course of this Facebook Live, we will mainly be focusing on Hurricane Maria. We will also talk about what else is going on in the tropics. We are preparing for News 5 at 5 o'clock, so we will be giving you a full update on TV on WKRG News 5 at 5, so stay tuned for that. So we'll give you a full update then. This Facebook Live going to be relatively short, probably going to be anywhere from 10 to 15 minutes. Again, we will talk about Hurricane Maria. We will talk about its forecast track and what we're thinking with Hurricane Maria. We will also talk about Hurricane Jose, and we'll talk about now Tropical Depression Lee. So there's a lot of stuff going on in the tropics. We now have another hurricane out in the Atlantic Basin. That is Hurricane Maria. For those of you just tuning in, it's our 13th named storm of the season, and it appears that it is our 7th hurricane of the Atlantic hurricane season. So far this year, it hasn't been a surprise to see a hurricane. We have another one, and the forecast for Maria is to gradually strengthen, and by the time it approaches Puerto Rico, it might be a major hurricane. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and flip around the camera so you can see the layout of the land for the tropics, and then we'll start with Hurricane Maria, then we'll talk about Jose, and then we'll talk about Lee. Then we'll kind of do a recap. I'll answer a few questions. So if you're getting to this video a little bit later on, you'll be able to go back through and rewatch this. So we're currently here at the Weather Center. We're getting ready for News 5 at 5 o'clock. So again, if you're getting to this a little bit later on, you'll be able to tune in for News 5 at 5. Plus, we'll do another Facebook Live after the show concludes with a little bit more in-depth look. So you have Hurricane Jose, Category 1 hurricane. Maria, as of the 4 o'clock Central Daylight Time update from the National Hurricane Center, has become a hurricane. So now we have 2 hurricanes out in the Atlantic Basin. You have Maria and Jose, and we continue to watch Lee, which is now only a tropical depression. And Lee looks like it is going to continue to fizzle away as it moves into the Central Atlantic. So for this, we'll focus mainly on Maria, and we will also talk about Jose and the potential impacts for the northeastern coast of the United States. So there are a lot of people that tune in from all across the country to watch this, so bear with me if I try to paint out a few different locations that a few people might not be familiar with. Hurricane Maria currently has winds of 75 miles per hour. It's moving fairly quickly to the west-northwest at 15 miles per hour and has a pressure of 982 millibars. Right now, Hurricane Maria is about 200 miles to the east of the Leeward Islands, but the forecast for Maria is to gradually gain strength. So what I'm going to do now is show you the satellite loop. This is a 1-kilometer satellite loop of the last 3 hours. You can clearly see that we're starting to see more thunderstorms. We're starting to see it kind of wrap around, so maybe signs that it is intensifying. And you can even see the low-level swirl within the last couple hours. So as we've gone throughout today, we have seen Maria strengthen, and we're more than likely going to continue to see strengthening as we move throughout the rest of today. So our graphics have been moving a little bit slowly, but again, for those of you just tuning in, has currently winds of 75 miles per hour. That makes it a Category 1 hurricane. Is moving fairly quickly to the west-northwest at 15 miles per hour. And has a pressure of 982. Its location is 13.8 north and 57.5 degrees west. Now, before I talk about the forecast for Maria, at this moment, it does not pose a threat to the mainland United States, but areas along the East Coast will probably be watching this very closely, along with everyone that lives along the Gulf Coast and the East Coast will be watching this very closely as well. So we'll talk about all of that in the forecast discussion that we are just about to get into. So as it approaches the Leeward Islands, we expect continual strengthening, potentially by the end of today and into tomorrow. Might become a Category 2 hurricane as it approaches the same areas that Hurricane Irma moved over just about a week and a half ago. So you have hurricane warnings in effect for these areas. We'll show you the watches and warnings in just a minute or so from now. But as it approaches Puerto Rico and Hispaniola, could potentially be a major hurricane. The National Hurricane Center thinks by Tuesday and Wednesday could have winds of 120 or 125 miles per hour. Right now, it's uncertain whether or not it's going to directly impact Puerto Rico or Hispaniola, but as you can see, they're in the center of the cone. So any areas from the Leeward Islands towards Puerto Rico and then towards Hispaniola, we need to be watching this very closely. Plus, that goes for the Turks and Caicos just to the east of the Bahamas. But this forecast, again, takes it until Friday. So we have a long time, at least here in the mainland, to watch it. And by next Friday, the outer extent of the forecast cone will still be about 400 miles to the east of South Florida. So again, there's a lot of time to watch this. Hurricane warnings, hurricane watches, tropical storm warnings, and tropical storm watches in effect for the Leeward Islands. So I'll go ahead and back this up so you can see. But you have tropical storm warnings for Barbuda. You also have hurricane warnings for the U.S. and British Virgin Islands. We don't have a hurricane watch in effect for Puerto Rico just yet. But if this forecast continues to be the same, don't be surprised if you see a hurricane watch in effect for Puerto Rico, plus the island of Hispaniola, which includes the Dominican Republic and also the country of Haiti. Here's a look at the forecast projections. I know a lot of folks are probably interested in this bit of information. These are some of the forecast models that we continuously use. Most of the models have a pretty good bead on where Hurricane Maria is currently, but not all of them are doing that great of a job. As Maria continues to gain strength, models in theory we should start to do a little bit better job. But they show it moving to the west-northwest, impacting the Leeward Islands over the areas that are under the warnings currently. So this goes until next Tuesday. By that point, it will be approaching Puerto Rico. By next Wednesday into next Thursday, should be approaching the island of Hispaniola, so the Dominican Republic, potentially also Haiti. And then the forecast models having it moving into the western Atlantic towards the Turks and Caicos. But from next Friday into next weekend, most models are in agreement that it's going to take a turn to the north. The steering winds at this point for Friday into Saturday look like it will be moving to the north. Again, this is still a long way out. A lot of things can change. But right now, it looks like it is going to take that turn towards the western Atlantic. So, again, that's why the East Coast may be watching this a little bit more closely, but obviously here in the Gulf Coast, we'll be watching this very closely as well. Right now, it's unlikely that it moves into the Florida Straits, but again, not out of the realm of possibility. And right now, it's unlikely that it moves into the Gulf of Mexico, but again, nothing set in stone. But as you can see, most of the reliable forecast models having it moving into the western Atlantic towards the Turks and Caicos and to the Bahamas, and that's only by next Saturday. So that's still a long time to watch. We still have a long time to figure out where Maria is going to go. Let's go ahead and talk about what else is out there, because we continue to track Hurricane Jose. It's a Category 1 hurricane. As we've gone through today, we have seen a little bit in the way of strengthening. It's currently got winds of 90 miles per hour. It's moving to the north at 9 miles per hour. So it is moving fairly slowly. It's about, it's good ways off the coast in South Carolina, so it's about 440 miles away from Charleston, South Carolina, maybe producing swells and high rip currents along the eastern coast of the United States. But with this slow movement, it's expected to continue to move due north. But once it makes its way north of Cape Hatteras to the east, it'll start to encounter some cooler waters. By that point, it should start to weaken. It should get relatively close to the northeastern seaboard, but we're thinking it's going to take a right turn or turn to the east as we make our way into Wednesday and into next Friday, and then stay away from that point. Right now, it doesn't look likely that it's going to be directly impacting the eastern coast of the United States, but any area from Washington, D.C. to Boston will no doubt continue to watch this closely, and right now, again, that does not pose a threat to the Gulf of Mexico. So we're continually watching Hurricane Maria, but we are also continuing to follow Tropical Depression Lee. But Tropical Depression Lee is what the name says. It's a tropical depression. Earlier it was a tropical storm, and the forecast for Lee is to basically degenerate and become a remnant low by the time we get to basically tomorrow or on Tuesday. So we're not expecting all that much from Tropical Depression Lee. The main story that we'll be following rather closely for interests along the Gulf Coast will be Hurricane Maria. Currently has winds of 75 miles per hour and is moving fairly quickly to the west-northwest at 15 miles per hour. So again, like I said, right now it's unlikely that it moves into the Florida Straits and moves into the Gulf of Mexico. Nothing is set in stone just yet. So we'll obviously continue to watch this very closely. But right now, it's too early to say whether or not it will have direct impacts on the United States. But anywhere in Florida, obviously, is going to be watching this very closely. And right now, it's unlikely that it moves into the Gulf of Mexico. But like we've said before and time again, there's always at least a little bit of uncertainty with the tropics, and especially this far out when we're talking about a forecast that's more than a week away. So it'll still only be towards the Bahamas by the time we get to next Saturday. There's a long time to watch Maria, and we will continue to watch Maria very closely. Time is currently 4:30. We got to get ready for News 5 at 5 o'clock, so we'll go ahead and do that. A lot of folks have been asking questions. I'm sorry that I haven't been able to get to some of these questions, but like I said, we got to get ready for the show, and a lot of folks continue to ask questions, and I hope for most of the questions on here, we've already answered most of these questions, but I will go back through this feed and answer questions if I didn't answer it during the video. Also, make sure that you stay tuned. We'll have another Facebook Live after News 5 at 5 o'clock. Stay tuned for that. Don't forget to hit the like and follow button on the WKRG Facebook page plus my Facebook page, so whenever we do that Facebook Live, you'll be able to get a notification. But thank you guys for watching. I greatly appreciate it. Right now, there are no tropical threats to the Gulf of Mexico, but there are 2 hurricanes out there, and we will continue to watch them very closely. Thank you guys for tuning in. We'll see you guys in about an hour or so from now. I'm meteorologist Thomas Geboy, and we'll talk to you later.